On one hand, a Ferrari dominates, winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2023, 2024 and 2025, while on the other hand, we have a Ferrari in Formula 1 that found itself as the fourth force in Canada behind the group. And why is there this clear difference between these two Ferraris, which are two sides of the same coin? In today's video, we're going to look at the situation inside Ferrari and what could change in the future. We're also going to look at the words of Lewis Hamilton. We need to hear from Max Verstappen too, and also the feud between Toto Wolff and Christian Horner with Red Bull, who have attacked the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. Before we begin, please show your support by liking the videos on this channel. Now, let's dive right in. This is the brutal picture of today's Ferrari, which is a glorious team split into two opposite realities. The Hypercar 499P, a winning, solid car developed by Antonelli and his team in the World Endurance Championship, contrasts with a Formula 1 single-seater. It remains incapable of winning a Grand Prix in 2025, the sole underperformer among top teams, a series of disappointments. But let's rewind a bit. How did Ferrari's endurance project originate? The World Endurance Championship project wanted by Elkann in 2023 worked from the start. The return to Le Mans after 50 years was triumphant, and this year the supremacy was total. Porsche, Cadillac, BMW, Peugeot, Alpine and Aston Martin all lost. And leading the project is none other than Antonelli, the man who is writing. The 499P's Le Mans triple win demonstrates its reliability, ushering in a new golden era for the missile. That's why his name is now also being mentioned for Formula 1. In fact, if we see a failure in Formula 1, it's because after 10 Grand Prix, there are 0 victories. On the other hand, McLaren, Red Bull and Mercedes have already triumphed, while Ferrari hasn't won in 10 Grand Prix. And the SF25 had started with great hopes after a good 2024, but it proved to be fragile. Weak strategy, ineffective developments and recurring errors have influenced Ferrari's season. And meanwhile, the discontent grows. Both Leclerc and Hamilton openly criticize the team as unstable. Vasseur's leadership is faltering, and with a contract expiring, his future is anything but certain. For this reason, we must determine if Coletta is truly heading towards Formula 1, as his name is favored by the higher-ups. Elkann respects him and his objective results in the European Union. However, be cautious, as Formula 1 is a different world, more intricate, volatile and even fiercer. As a clash between all the team principles, accepting the sports management now would mean entering the race with a team built by others. A bit like what Vasseur also did at the end of 2022 in a climate full of tension. In 2026, the most radical regulatory change in history will arrive, bringing new cars, engines, and tires.
A challenge that also takes us back to the early 2000s in some ways. In short, Ferrari is at a crossroads.
On one hand, there is the winning concreteness of endurance, while on the other, the desperate search for the relaunch of Formula 1. Changing leadership now could either save the project or sink it completely. This is the question to which Ferrari must provide an answer. One thing is certain as Aleman waves the tricolor flag and Mameli's anthem plays. Ferrari hit a low point in Canada recently. If this is Formula 1's future, the prancing horse really passes from Coletta's hands, well, we will find out soon. I'll be honest, if Ferrari's Formula 1 team moves from Vasseur to Coletta, I would still be very happy. Coletta has proven over the years to know how to manage a team and lead it to victory. For 3 years in a row in the 24 Hours of Le Mans, so he knows how to manage a top team. Let's remember that Vasseur is a good team principal. However, in his history, he has always managed smaller teams, taking them from mediocre results to good results. However, he has never had the chance to manage a top team, and this is a detail that I think influences. As he also says, is it true that this team he is currently managing is not 100% chosen by Vasseur? In 2026, we will see the actual effectiveness of Ferrari's technical group. However, as of today, Vasseur is struggling to manage the internal and external situation at Ferrari. The final decision will fall on John Elkann, so we will see what
he will do. And
what would you do in such a chaotic situation? How would you rebuild the Formula 1 Ferrari? And we know that Ferrari is officially the only top team that has not yet won in 2025. Leclerc's error in qualifying and Hamilton's car damage halted their mini resurgence from Monaco and Barcelona in Montreal. In the pit, they're discussing tensions, flawed strategies, and an internal pact that appears to be fracturing. After 2 promising weekends, Canada has exposed a jittery and uncoordinated Ferrari. Leclerc's Q3 mistake, which he admitted cost him pole position, compromised his race from the start. But it wasn't just that. Hamilton damaged the bottom on the 12th lap, losing half a second per lap. And as if that wasn't enough, both drivers had to deal with constant lift and coast radio messages. Translated, slow down to cool the brakes, an order repeated for almost the entire race, a sign that something in the cooling system didn't work. And we know the layout of Montreal does not require prolonged support, but Ferrari still found itself in trouble. Managing temperatures was a nightmare, and the indecisive strategies did the rest. Leclerc started with an aggressive plan, hard tires, and only one stop. But the broken pace of the pit wall requests and the risk of graining on the medium led to a change of course. 2 stops for Leclerc as for Hamilton, but with this car and this type of management, nothing would have made a difference. But we need to talk not only about Canada, but also about the skid block chapter. Many wondered if the new Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile Directive on the skid would impact Ferrari. The answer is no. The SF25 finished the Grand Prix within the limits, but there is a fact that makes you think. From Shanghai, the team systematically avoids lowering the setup too much, and this can also be seen in the various shots on the track. Caution likely due to fear of another disqualification like the double one in China. Meanwhile, the 677 project has been frozen. It still revolves around the 678. Ferrari will continue to struggle until the real updates arrive, even according to Lewis Hamilton. Before the race, he said no updates had arrived despite their necessity. Vasseur was very harsh post-race. We'll check the press on Monday to see if things settle down. I don't want to add fuel to the fire, but it hurts to see made-up names like Balbo the Year. Strangers come into my office asking if it's true, even though I don't know him. The constant rumors are destabilizing Ferrari's internal environment. Diego Tondi and technicians, mechanics and others work daily fearing their name in a headline. President John Elkann was in Germany, not Montreal. The Trapera team's relationship with Vasseur remains solid, but its future is uncertain. To this day, the relationship between John Elkann and Frédéric Vasseur remains strong. Especially because they are aiming for the 2026 season and to have a winning project next year. All resources will now be invested in the 678 single-seater, and it's normal for the president to be present at Le Mans and not in Montreal. The 24 Hours of Le Mans is a historic event that happens once a year, and the president's presence is crucial. This also applies to endurance, but in Formula 1, it's clear if everyone else starts to grow, including Mercedes who won in Canada. Ferrari is the only team that remains stagnant to date, both in terms of updates and track results. Mercedes silenced everyone as Russell delivered a masterful qualifying performance and won the race authoritatively. And then there's Antonelli, first podium in his career at 18 years old, ahead of both McLarens, with one of the two also retiring. He also said it himself in the post-race, he didn't know who to slipstream when he had Norris and Piastri behind him. Verstappen consistently delivers for Red Bull, but the reality is that all their competitors have secured victories except for Ferrari. In Montreal, no McLaren finished on the podium for the first time in months. The most effective car of the year struggled on a track that penalizes the rear. Both Norris and Piastri struggled despite Lando's good pace. In the dirty air, the MCL 3090's efficiency declines. The team verified that the weekend focused on aerodynamic testing. The V-shaped rear wing, so-called from low load, has been confirmed. A sign that the technical directive 018, which requires stiffening the wings, could have altered the balance of the car. We also need to discuss Lewis Hamilton's situation, who spoke out after the race about his circumstances. In fact, after the first pit stop, something broke, literally a groundhog. It crossed the track before turn 10, damaging the bottom of Lewis Hamilton's car, causing him to lose a good 20 points of aerodynamic downforce. An absurd incident that compromised any chance of a comeback. But the real problem occurred afterwards. In the post-race interviews, Hamilton spoke bluntly. "I don't understand why we haven't brought updates yet. Something deeper is needed, structural changes are needed." He says it without accusing, but the message is clear. Ferrari, in its current state, cannot win. And according to Lewis, the key to solving everything is to change the approach. Not just technical developments, but method, structure, and organization. When Hamilton arrived in Maranello, he expected to find a team ready to fight at the top. But he encountered a very different reality. "I can't tell you everything that happens behind the scenes," he said, "but there are many things that would clarify many situations." This sentence carries immense significance. Something is stirring beneath the surface. And Hamilton, from being a silent leader, now wants to become an active voice of change. And he also added, "Being honest means admitting that we are not fighting for the title, but the real battle begins now." In fact, Hamilton is no longer looking at 2025, the focus is already on 2026, the year of the new regulation. And Lewis wants to be at the center of Ferrari's rebirth. He wants to build a team around a winning vision. He has sent the signal already. "I'm here to change everything." And he also weighed in on the current situation and what Ferrari's fans are feeling. I get the frustration, but it requires time, patience, and method. For some, Lewis Hamilton is already a leader. For others, it's too soon to trust. Hamilton remains the sole figure who speaks clearly, avoids excuses, and focuses on solutions. And while Hamilton speaks, Vasseur has also made his voice heard and declared to the French media, "We have changed everything." The drivers, the team principal, almost every figure in Ferrari, but there's still something that's not right. A shadow has been looming over Maranello for years, and something resists change. And we'll see if the change will start from these words. Do you think the revolution in Ferrari has just begun? We could also discuss numbers and results, as Lewis Hamilton hasn't been performing well since the beginning of the ground effect era. In fact, with these cars, from 2022 onwards, Hamilton only managed to finish ahead of his teammate Russell in 2023. In other seasons, he had a harder time compared to his teammate, even placing behind him in 2025. With 79 points, he's 25 behind Leclerc and risks ending the season 60 points behind. But beyond the final results, which depend a lot on the driving style and the car being driven, Hamilton needs a car in which he feels the connection, otherwise he can't push it to the limit. The most concerning result, in my opinion, is the one in qualifying. In fact, the comparison with Russell in the last seasons was 13-9 in 2022 and 11-11 in 2023. The season in which Hamilton was more on par with Russell of the last 5-19 in 2024 in favor of Russell and 3-7 after 10 Grand Prix in favor of Leclerc in 2025. Hamilton has been known more for his qualifying skills than his race performances, particularly before the ground effect era. But now, it's clear that Hamilton is more of a race driver than a qualifying driver. So we'll see if anything changes for next year in 2026 with a new car and a different era than the previous one. That said, we must also address Max Verstappen and Red Bull's protest. In fact, Canada was supposed to be Red Bull territory, but Max Verstappen struggled all weekend. The RB21 with medium tires quickly encountered issues pitting before the other cars. Kimi Antonelli overtook him after just a few turns while Russell was gaining ahead. A real attack never came, and so Verstappen ended up behind with no chance to respond. And this for him is a clear warning bell. Alarm. The race, however, also had a sensational controversial tale. During the safety car, Verstappen accuses Russell of brake testing on the straight before the start one. And Red Bull submits an official protest to the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, citing the unsportsmanlike behavior of the English driver. Russell replies that Verstappen overtook with his car's nose under safety car conditions. The result is that the appeal was launched, and 3 hours later, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile rejected it, declaring the conduct not punishable. However, I suspect that reading the paddock is another matter. That the protest was just a deterrent. A message to the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile to protect Max from possible sanctions, because actually the improper behavior was more on Max's part, overtaking Russell, than the other way around. And the race for Max was not entirely forgettable. He made up ground on plates and gained 18 points on Norris, who retired after the confrontation with his teammate. But there remains the feeling that for the first time in 2025, Red Bull seemed vulnerable, especially with Mercedes suddenly back at the top. The V16, aided by updates to the floor and rear suspension back on track, found rhythm and stability even with 50 degrees of asphalt. Russell dominated, Antonelli podiumed, and Red Bull observed. Post-race, Christian Horner commented, "The balance of power can change quickly, we have to believe in it." Look at what Mercedes did, and Toto Wolff harshly attacked Horner and Red Bull. An embarrassing, unsportsmanlike, and borderline behavior that destroys the credibility of Formula 1. In fact, the alleged brake test under safety car affecting Verstappen and non-compliance with the safety car's minimum distance. These are two accusations made by Red Bull. The first accusation remains, the second has been withdrawn. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile opened an investigation and subsequently rejected the protest announcement. And Toto Wolff went hard on it. Red Bull did the same in Miami. First 2 protests, then 1 withdrawn. It's a systematic strategy to destabilize us and protect Verstappen. According to the Mercedes team principal, Horner's is not just a technical issue, but a political game. To generate confusion, distract the press, and put pressure on the opponents. To use regulatory loopholes, force interpretations, and keep the teams in court. Well, for me, this is not the Formula 1 that people want, Toto Wolff said. Red Bull has won for years thanks to the track. Now it attacks sportsmanship when it loses. Horner reiterated every team has the right to report anomalies. Ours was a legitimate, necessary, and founded initiative. If the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has rejected the complaint, so be it, there is no remorse. And Horner reiterated that there are rules to be respected even under safety car. In summary, tensions are high not just between Verstappen and Russell, but especially between Horner and Toto Wolff. The real danger, in my view, is Formula One's credibility. Montreal has exposed the paradox of modern Formula One. That there are increasingly complex regulations, off-track strategies more influential, overtakes and technical directives very difficult to understand. So where does the tactic end and where does the unfair play begin? This is the real question we should answer. I want to conclude the video by talking, of course, about the Italian pride of Montreal. That is Kimi Antonelli, who finished on the podium at 18 years old, his first podium in Formula One, and he ran a masterful race. But now let's see it together. In fact, Antonelli's third place is much more than good news, it's a signal. The Bolognese, born in 2006, withstood Verstappen's pressure and fended off the McLaren's comeback. He started strong, matching Max's pace for most of the race, and defended himself at the end. We can say, after some underperforming races that sparked discussion, a veteran's management was changed. Antonelli perfectly managed the first stint, opening the gap and then rejoining the group. Head with rubber. Hard. He couldn't keep up with Russell, and Max took a conservative approach, paying a 6-second gap. But we can say that Mercedes has real talent in their hands, and the Canadian Grand Prix has demonstrated this despite errors. At confusion, those who work well and quietly can make a difference. And in your opinion, is Kimi Antonelli already ready to win in Formula One? How do you see the future of his season and also of Mercedes after this victory in Canada? Tell me your opinion on all the topics we have covered in the video. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on all Formula One news. Check out the related videos. See you in the next Rastroduto video.